Paul from Ghana, South Africa. Let's talk about in terms of the Constitutional Court yesterday. I know there's...
So, has prepared a summary of the events yesterday in the Constitutional Court. So I'm going to go through them pretty much as Chris has set them out for me, because of course I also was attended the whole hearing, but my memory might not be as good as Chris's, who actually made notes, etc., etc. Right, so the proceedings opened with the counsel for SAPS and the the minister making his case. Different thing. All of the papers are already lodged, the arguments are already lodged beforehand, and the judges have steeped themselves in the papers and they know everything that's going on. And they generally only come back and ask the people to answer questions.
Okay.
So typically
they've all read, everything has been read beforehand.
Yeah, pretty much. So the characters here, and I'm going to the counsel for who's a senior counsel and advocate for the police. There was a senior counsel advocate for Fidelity, who are the respondents in this case. It was the police that were the applicants, because they took the Fidelity case to court to try to overturn the Supreme Court of Appeal. And we have a wet Rottweiler who's just.
Let's just see what's going on. The camera. Put this out.
Hi.
Sorry, guys. Yes, now. Okay. Shall we start again?
So please be patient. We had a small technical issue.
Okay. It's like a little bit of a circus here today.
Yeah, we have
Which is the circus dog, who's just been for a swim in the pool.
yes, that one. Yes. Sorry,
Okay.
guys.
Okay, shall we start again? I don't think it was any audio, so let's start right from the start. Sorry. Well, there's sound now, I think, from Uji.
Yes. Okay, guys. Yeah.
Hi.
Yes, hi again. Sorry about the sound problem earlier.
We're going to go through the summary of yesterday's Constitutional Court matter.
It was very interesting.
It was very interesting, and I suspect that we may be getting more out of this than what we hoped,
Yes.
than what we dared hoped for even. So what happened basically is that years and years ago, Fidelity Security Group had a problem, and a lot of their firearms, but they had a responsible person in charge of the armory who was very sick and then later died. And was replaced then obviously by a new responsible person. When the new responsible person opened up the books, it was, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of firearms whose licenses had
We're talking about 700 firearms.
there was
around.
talk before that it was more over the 900, but now it seems to be 700 that they have a problem with. In any case, so they went to court to try, and the police refused to consider license applications.
Not malicious. It wasn't done.
No, so this is
That
the
is
whole
the same
problem.
problem.
This is the problem that we went to court with last year. We said it's impossible that there isn't a mechanism in the law for when licenses lapse, when they expire, there must be a way of fixing that.
Absolutely.
And
you can't
the
just
Supreme Court of Appeal said to us last year, no, if your licenses expire, you're a bad person, you cannot do anything, you have to surrender to the police infrastructure.
It doesn't sound. It sounds like.
So in actual fact, the Supreme Court of Appeal last year were a bunch of asses, because that's not what the law says at all. In any case, so apologies to the justices of the Supreme Court that I've just defamed, but you know what they say, the law is an ass, and they proved it.
Okay, so
So anyway,
you're gonna go through-
so Fidelity. They had a whole bunch of firearms. They were reluctant. Thank you,
Yes,
Uji.
Uji.
They were reluctant to have all of those firearms handed in for destruction. So they went to the cops and they said to the cops, "Can we apply for license?" And the cops said, "No, you can't."
Well,
You
the
are-
system has actually been disallowed from people
Well,
being able
yes,
to
the
renew it.
system, that's exactly right. In 2018, the police fiddled the system to prevent late applications.
Yeah.
And they've been trying to backstop this position ever since. In any case, so the North Gauteng High Court disagreed with Fidelity. So Fidelity took it to the Supreme Court of Appeal, which hearing was held in March of this year. And the Supreme Court of Appeal, reversing their position on our matter last July, said, "Yeah, sure, you can ask for new licenses." So the police didn't like that, so the police now challenged that order and went to the Constitutional
And
Court
this
with
is
that
what
order. So
happened
this is what
yesterday.
happened. So in this case, the police are the applicants because they're applying to have the Supreme Court of Appeal order overturned.
Yeah.
Fidelity are the respondents. And the camera lady has to keep stroking the Rottweiler to prevent him from barking. And it's not working very well. Every time she stops, he barks. Anyway, so the cast of characters here, there were 8 Supreme Court justices, 8 Constitutional Court justices in the court, including Acting Chief Justice Zondo. There
The
was
famous Zondo Commission as well.
there was a senior counsel and advocate for the state, Shakwani. And there was a senior counsel advocate for Fidelity, which was Maurice Snyman. So I'm going to refer to the people, please, no disrespect, guys, to the justices as well. I'm just going to refer to them by their surnames for brevity. Certain of the justices had a very good showing. Certain of the justices didn't cover themselves with glory, including one of them who slept through the entire proceeding. Well, you know, it is what it is. Or maybe he was just thinking with his eyes closed. Yeah. So in any case, the judgment has been reserved,
Sorry.
but the hearing of the matter was incredibly interesting
Yeah.
because some things came out which perhaps shouldn't have come out from the state side. And we're going to go through those because there's some humorous moments. So just to run through the basic events as they happened. Shakwani opened with the issue of possession and ownership. He seems to be confused about the whole difference between possession and ownership. Possession is, of course, the ability to have the firearm with you.
And ownership is
And ownership is to be able to own it. It's yours, but you can't have it with you. You know, so and there seems to be a lot of confusion from the state side about where the lines are born here. And that's just pure ignorance. So the state is of the view that one cannot lawfully have possession of a firearm, then one cannot be the owner of said firearm. That's of course completely wrong.
Yeah.
So Acting Chief Justice Zondo shot down this with the driving license. You can own a car but not have a driving license.
Yeah.
It's perfectly. It doesn't affect your ownership. It just affects your ability to drive. Shakwani then realized that he made a mistake. He's dropped his ball in his water bowl.
Sorry, it's like a circus here.
Shakwani conceded that SAPs have no issue with allowing new license applications as long as the applicant is not in possession of the firearm. Okay. Their position is that if the firearm is surrendered, a new application can be made as long as one interdicts the destruction thereof. So now this has... No.
Stop it.
Reggie, enough. Come here. Reggie, come. Sit. Oh, you went. That's it. Sorry, there we go. So anyway, the state seems to be happy after this was explained to them that
the applicant can
lodge a new license application, as long as
and then interdict the destruction, hand the gun to the police and interdict the destruction.
okay.
But the police
So that means
must know-
everybody, not just Fidelity. Guys, listen up.
Yeah, it's very important.
Zondo raised the concern with the timeline of destruction and reapplication. How would the SAPS keep record of the application and not allow the firearms to be destroyed?
Is the camera still right?
This is still pointing towards us. Okay. So now one of the Constitutional Court justices who was in the Hunters matter, the SA Hunters matter a couple of years ago, Justice Thron, raised the point that once a license expires, the license terminates in terms of Section 28, Section 139, amnesty being the only mechanism that can be used to obtain another license for the firearm. The SAPS cannot ignore legislation, and destruction is the only way forward within an amnesty. So Justice Thorne, remember, she's got a dog in the fight, because she was instrumental in the Hunters Hunters judgment, which was a bad judgment. I mean, it was just bad law. And now she's trying to backstop that. She's trying to anyway. So then Justice Majid piped up,
And he raised in terms of Section 149(2), a firearm must be destroyed within 6 months after all possible appeals are made.
so now this is introducing the concept of appeals as well. Okay, so Section 136(2) was put forward as a remedy to prevent destruction, and Section 136(2) says that once the firearm has been published in the Government Gazette, you can make representation of why the firearm and ammunition should not be destroyed. So this is all they were discussing all of this stuff actively, which was quite good. At which stage Advocate Shakwani conceded that if these steps are followed, would process the application. Listen to this, guys. This is important. So if you hand a firearm into the SAPS without an amnesty, the SAPS have conceded that they will allow a new license application to be made on that firearm, and they will not destroy the firearm. So this is kind of important. This is and one of the things then that Zondo raised, that this is needlessly complex, he said, and it's a needlessly complex process for a simple act. Shakwani answered that that's the law. And then Justice Pillay raised the point that the SCA judgment made no reference
To any changes to the Act. Simply that there is no
preclusion in the Act preventing a new application. So, a question raised by Shakwani about the SAPS policy regarding reapplications, he answered that there is no policy preventing this, as we know that there isn't. At which point, Acting Chief Justice Zondo raised the lacuna. A lacuna is a logical fallacy. It's a hole in the law.
Yeah.
It's something the law doesn't cover. Something the law should cover, but it doesn't. So it's a lacuna. Judge Zondo raised the lacuna. If the Act does not prohibit reapplication, and SAPS policy will allow it, what then is the purpose of Section 28(1), which deals with the termination of licenses? If there are no consequences for allowing a license to expire, then why have termination for an expired license at all? Shakwani answered that the SAPS have to enforce these provisions and that firearm owners have Section 136(2) as a remedy to prevent destruction. So again, you hand your gun in, even if it's handed in to the police and the police say we don't store firearms, we just take them in for destruction, that you can ask in terms of 136(2) that the firearm not be destroyed whilst you lodge an application for a new license. You're not renewing the license, you're applying for a new license, in the same way that you do with an amnesty.
But amnesty was never a good idea, because amnesties are for illegal guns, not a way to deal with legal guns, which they've been trying to do.
Exactly, that's the point.
Which is but again, the SAPS has got no space as well.
So then there's
other problems.
This is one of the things that was raised then by Justice Tsiki. Justice Tsiki was sitting in the background listening to this whole thing and then raised the point that the state is of the view that if the state is of the view that one needs to interdict their destruction earlier in the proceedings, SAPS considered that the provisions of Section 136 are enough to stop destruction.
Court interdiction is not necessary. So you don't have to go and apply to the court to interdict destruction.
You can merely advance a motivation why the gun shouldn't be destroyed. Then another dark horse in the matter, Justice Rogers, who's a very smart guy, raised the point that Section 20 allows, which is the section under which security companies license their firearms.
Like Fidelity.
Like Fidelity, but it isn't significantly different in this aspect to the other sections. Section 20 allows applications for any firearm other than a prohibited firearm. Okay, so prohibited firearms are fully automatic, it's rocket launchers, it's blah blah blah.
Grenade launchers.
It's also unlawful firearms. Okay, so what SAPS has been trying to do is say that since the firearms license has expired, it's an unlawful firearm. But that's not so, because an unlawful fire anyway. So, but what Justice Rogers says then is
A firearm possessed with an expired license is not defined in the Act as a prohibited firearm. So this is another, either
lacuna, another hole in the law, or an oversight, or that's what was intended by the drafters. We have no indication of which way that goes. As such, there is nothing that stops new applications.
So we didn't expect this to be happening. This is very interesting.
So this is before Fidelity's council even made their case. This is the justices of the Constitutional Court
already after reading the paper,
shooting holes in the state's argument.
That's very interesting.
Which is very interesting, not what we expected at all. However, you must remember, soaking wet ball was just dropped on my knees. And it's now being barked at because it's rolled under his dog bed.
That's
no,
not Daddy. There we go.
Anyway, so this is, but the justices at Constitutional Court level, it's not like an ordinary court. They don't wait for evidence to be introduced to them. They read all of the written arguments beforehand.
It was also quite clear that they have read the amicus papers from GOSA side.
They also read, although all the amici, the four
friends of the court, ourselves,
just Sakeliga,
PASA, the Professional Actors Association, and NATSHU, although we haven't yet been officially
heard, the justices had read our papers already. Now we had our papers specifically and exclusively, I think, in this set of amici, had been designed to answer the questions which would come up in terms of the Fidelity case. We coordinated quite closely with Fidelity on this to make sure that they were happy with the questions we were asking, and that the questions we were asking would assist.
So when this came up, and there was a couple of cases that came up,
you could see, in fact, Zondo actually raised some of the points that we raised in our amicus papers. The whole thing about 136 that Zondo raised was us. So anyway, so that was pretty cool to hear that. There was another case also later on when Marius Snyman refers specifically to an affidavit in the Gun Owners Association papers that refers to the DFO at Groot Brockrivier, one of our members had given us the affidavit. Basically, I gone to his DFO to renew his license, only to find that the DFO had retired.
The cop said to him, no, don't worry, we were going to appoint a new DFO at some stage,
and you can come back then. He said, but can't I give my application in somewhere else? And they said, no, you've got to come here. So anyway, he went away. He heard a couple of months down the line that a new DFO had been. Who's choking on what?
No, she sneezed.
Sorry, the staffy sneezed. It's the first time you've ever heard the staffy on camera. Anyway, so he went back to the DFO, and the DFO said to him, no, but your license is expired now.
But that's how ridiculous this whole process is.
So the interesting thing is that when Maurice Snyman started referring to this as the Gun Owners Association's papers and affidavit and Groot biography, a little smile came onto the lips of Justice Zondo. He knew exactly where it was going, and this is the problem. This is the problem that the SCA last year, in their arrogance, couldn't spot.
These people, most of these people, yes, some people just purely forgot, but some people were out of the country. They couldn't renew it. They were sick. There was all kinds of
Lockdown locked
issues.
people out of the country. They couldn't get back home in time.
So
one of our members was on deployment in the Congo with the South African National Defence Force. His deployment was extended. He couldn't get back. When he went to his DFO said, sorry, handed in for destruction. It's one of the things that the Supreme Court of Appeal, in our case last year, was too arrogant to take note of. They just said everybody whose license is expired is in unlawful possession of their firearm, and they have no option but to give it in for destruction.
There should be no reason that
the Greeks used to say, amongst all things, the gods hate hubris. They strike down hubris first.
Had that discussion before.
And yes, and this seems to be this coming home to visit the Supreme Court of Appeal. I hope the justices take note. In any case, so then we adjourn.
Just hold on. Come, Urge.
Sorry, the Rottweiler is disturbing.
It's really.
Look at the camera's pointing. Can you thank you?
Sorry, guys.
We have to adjust the camera for the Rottweiler. Sorry for that.
So Jess is for the first time our camera lady today, and she's not having fun. So
there we go. That's better.
there we go.
Okay. So we can see on the screen what's going on, and she's trying to wrestle the Staffy and the Rottweiler and the camera. Okay.
I don't know what's going on today.
All right. So then they broke for lunch.
Sit.
Once the court reconvened, Maurice Snyman took his turn. And he expressed nobody expected the state to have conceded. Basically, they conceded the whole game in the morning. I mean, without the respondent even being in court, they managed to give away the whole game. They said, sure, you can hand in license applications. The only point seeming to be that the police want the firearms to be surrendered before you can apply. Okay.
But they don't have space.
Well, they don't have space, etc. So once the court reconvened, Snyman expressed his surprise with the SAP's concessions on the papers on the SAP's papers. They'd made a blanket refusal to process new applications for firearms with expired licenses. And now this had become clear that you are able to apply for a new license. Then Zondo piped up again and said that if a license terminates and one cannot apply for a license for the same firearm, serious consequences will follow, as the new firearms are not cheap. He asked for a solution. So at last now we have a judicial officer looking for a solution. Justices of the Supreme Court of Appeal, please take note. This is supposed to have been your job. In any case, Snyman then went on and said that temporary authorizations, Section 21 permits, could be used in the interim, so that the guns wouldn't have to be handed into the police, so that the guns could stay with the relevant parties, and you could apply for a new license. Now, the police have for the last couple of years refused point blank to consider Section 21 permits.
Unlawfully. That's what the police do.
It's always been in the past. It's mostly for imported firearms, or if
There's a problem
Yes.
to get that.
Justice Zondo then asked if there would be a difference if a renewal was processed instead of a new application. Justice Zondo raised that it would be illogical for Fidelity not to be allowed to reapply. Then Justice Rogers, he waits. He seems to wait in the background, and he sees what everybody else is talking about, and he formulates.
So clever man.
He's a very clever man. He formulates. There was a couple of very clever people. Justice Majid, Justice Siki, which we thought we didn't know much about her, and she popped up and she came in with some very good questions. Justice Pillay. In all, we were quite impressed with most of the justices of the Constitutional Court. They were.
Sorry, this is going to carry on, guys. Do you want to stay?
I've been out this morning, so now I'm
Now he ran pages.
extra thing.
Sorry. So then, Justice
Reiterated that the state had conceded that new applications can be submitted, and that a proviso that the firearms needed to be surrendered to SAPs. He raised a concern that the SAPs do not have the capacity to store the firearm, and that Section 21 permits may be used. Okay, so we've gone over that. So then Zondo again raised the fact that since SAPS has conceded, there's actually no case. He actually said, why are you wasting our time? Referring to the state, because the state took this case to the court.
It is very interesting.
There is no case, and he asked if a judgment was necessary. Sorry, he's drinking water now. Obviously, interrupting the filming of a live thing is tiring for him, and he gets thirsty.
Jumping over the
Sorry, Bob, you're making a real character of yourself. All right. So then, Justice Thron. This is interesting.
So Justice Thron seems to be, as I mentioned before, she was involved in the Hunter's judgment, and she seems to want to defend that at all costs. She gets very defensive about it, even beyond defending it. She gets defensive. So anytime somebody mentioned, even when the state's advocate said something that might be construed to be negative towards the Hunter's verdict, she jumped up and down. She really got stroppy. So then she went and did something which I think was quite amazing.
Yes.
Snyman, she raised the point that a judgment in this case favouring fidelity would make Section 139, the amnesty clause, superfluous. Snyman answered that amnesty gives an opportunity to apply in any circumstances, not just for an expired license.
It should have never been used
Justice
for
Thron then went on to explain that this matter was already addressed in the Hunter's case. It wasn't, but she thinks it was. And that fidelity has other remedies, such as compensation.
that. Oh, ooh.
So
That is,
many years ago,
GOSA started out. We didn't have any money. We couldn't afford representation of our own at all. We started out
on the issue of compensation for surrendered firearms.
Oh, God. I'm sorry.
It became known as the Justice Alliance case because Justice Alliance was an NGO that took on our case at no cost to us, or at very low cost. And False Bay Gun Club was the applicants in this case. GOSA organised and orchestrated it to ask for compensation for surrendered firearms. And it went to the Western Cape High Court, and they agreed with us initially. Then the state appealed it to the same Western Cape High Court, and the second sitting of the Western Cape High Court, a full bench, then went against that and said, no, there is no compensation payable unless the police
intend to use the firearms.
But it's property.
But it's property. So this case must be 10 years ago. So this case has been sitting in the background the whole time. Police have refused to deal with
Application for compensation because of the Justice Alliance
case. So in the Hunter's case in the Constitutional Court 2018, I think it was. In that case, the police, the advocate for the police, who was at that stage, if I believe it was Budlander SC, said, but they can apply for compensation. And of course, we all knew that was nonsense, and you can't apply for compensation. So we all said, no. We didn't take it any further. Apparently, the justices who wrote the judgment did take note of that.
So,
and one of the reasons that they wrote the judgment that they wrote,
which was a shocking judgment at the time, still is a shocking judgment, because it doesn't deliver any justice at all.
One of the justices that wrote this was Tron. And Tron has now harkened back to this and says, but you can ask for compensation.
so what about those purdies that's been
Those matched sets of purdies that have been destroying furnaces with no compensation payable. So anyway,
when Advocate Maurice Snyman raised this and said, but there is no compensation payable, Justice Strawn puffed herself up and she said, excuse me, she said, I hate to be the one to remind you of this, but this is the Constitutional Court. The Constitutional Court has held in the Hunters matter that compensation is payable.
Wow, this is going to be boobies.
There goes the Justice Alliance judgment. There goes the no compensation payable. Out the window.
I hope everybody's listening and
I hope everybody that's surrendered a firearm is listening in. Because GOSA is going flat out to assemble a massive case for compensation for all of those
we know
people.
the police won't be able to.
The police can't pay it.
There's no way.
The police can't pay it.
But nonetheless, we're going to do it because you know what?
They try and hurt us, we try and hurt them back.
Anyway, so that's very interesting. Effectively, Justice Strawn, through her,
I don't want to say petulance, but through her defensiveness as to any aspect of the Hunters case being called into question, has now chucked the whole Justice Alliance case under the bus.
It's very interesting. That's a very interesting development.
This will have financial ramifications, big financial ramifications. Anybody out there in internet land that has that knows of anybody that surrendered a firearm and that wanted compensation and didn't get compensation, line up. The shop's open for business. Contact law@gosa.co.za and let's
get those papers rolling.
Okay, so what else is left on that?
Then Shakwani made he gets a chance to rebut. He made a horrible mess of misunderstanding. Maurice Snyman said...
He's the state prosecutor, am I correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So Maurice Snyman made a point that in terms of the law, in terms of the common law, if you own something, you have a right you have a right to own something. In terms of the rights of ownership, in the case of firearms, you have a right to apply for a license to it. Not saying you have a right to it, he says you have a right to apply for a license. The state still gets to choose. Shakwani made a horrible mess of this and misunderstood that, and then went on a rant about how firearm ownership is a privilege, not a right. Completely misunderstanding the whole difference between a right to own something and the right to apply for a license to possess something. Zondo then just concluded and said SAPS has conceded. SAPS have no issue with the new license application as long as the firearm in question is surrendered at any reserve judgment. They have promised us that they will come back to us now next week on Tuesday and tell us whether they want to hear from us. But in terms of the number of times that they referred to our papers and the number of times they used our arguments, in fact, I don't think they need to hear from us. I think it's pretty cut and dry. My estimation on this at this stage.
Yeah, what's happening from here?
So there was 8 judges. Estimations are that between 5 and 6 justices will go with we will confirm the SCA's appeal. Will confirm the fidelity case.
What does it mean?
Maybe two, maybe 3 justices will file. Will file a dissenting judgment. Which means they disagree, but nobody cares. It doesn't mean anything. It just means, well, they feel enough to. He's just run through his water bowl, and now he's shocked at his water bowl attacking him.
Oh God!
It's just almost like the Constitutional Court. No, Uchi, you're not going to bark now.
Okay, these toys underneath the bed.
Okay, so anyway, guys, so that basically what it is, they've reserved judgment. They may call upon us to argue orally. They probably won't. We estimate that it's probably going to go our way. It's probably going to be a good thing. We then, based on particularly Chief Justice Zondo, particularly based on his comments, we may even get better than just a judgment in favour of upholding the SCA appeal. We may end up getting an obiter remark, in other words, where the court expresses an opinion, We may get better than that. In terms of this, there's a couple of sections of the FCA that could quite possibly be now overturned
or declared to be unconstitutional.
That's important for
It
managers.
might put, well, GOSA is quite excited about it because if it's 24 and 28,
then it undermines the SCA judgment against us last year. Because if we turn out to have been correct, and the SCA in our case turns out to have been incorrect, if those sections are ruled to be unconstitutional, then we may end up with the SCA judgment against us last year being reversed.
So what does that mean? Cost?
Well, yeah, that has a whole bunch of implications, but it's quite exciting for us. So we're not trying to be over enthusiastic about this. We're desperately trying not to be, but it looks like the tide was flowing in one direction.
That's very
It could
interesting.
still change.
You never know.
You don't know.
You don't know what court cases will be.
Sorry, I need to release the one again. He's now looking for the ball, which is
okay, anyway, so that's what it is, guys. It's not bad news. It went better than we could have hoped.
We'll keep everybody updated on it. In any case, I will in the YouTube video underneath in the what you call it descriptions, the comments I will leave if you want to contribute to the legal fund. Please do so.
Guys, this cost us a fortune.
It's costing.
Even though we weren't in. Sorry.
Urge.
Gee.
Come. This way.
I've never had things like this.
I think the camera's not
No,
doing well.
working.
Is
It
it
looks like
working?
it's working. Okay,
It's
so
all right
guys,
that way.
This has cost us a fortune. We need to pay legal bills. We got, even if we had to have people on standby, even though we didn't
get to be heard in court.
Yeah.
So that has implications. These guys work for money. Although they work for love, a lot in our case they can't work.
They can't give everything.
You guys
To contribute, please do so. Did you send a monkey mail out to?
We're sending a mail out this afternoon, a gorillagram or what's it?
Monkey mail.
Monkey mail.
Sorry.
MailChimp. MailChimp. We send MailChimp. That thing.
The other thing that I wanted to ask you, so please support us in our legal funds, the GOSA. Please just tell us about
What's happening to the PAIA application?
So last week we put in a PAIA application to effectively stop the ministerial webinar. The police have come back to us now and we said to them, look, we still want
The information.
at the time they came back and said to us, oh, do you still want this since we've cancelled? Yes, we still want that information. They've come back to us now and disputed whether our instructing attorney, who is well known to them,
who has acted for us for a couple of years,
has the right to represent us. Boom. So we've answered that, of course, and we've decided, well, since they're going to be nasty about it, two can play this game. So we're sending in a second PAIA request because we want to know what role the chair of the Firearms Appeal Board, Advocate Shandi, what role she played in the drafting of the Firearms Control Amendment Bill 2021. Because she's supposed to be an independent party. We have very good information that she actually chaired the drafting committee for the new amendment bill.
So we need the information.
That is a huge breach of the Chinese wall that's supposed to stand between an independent body. She's trying to be referee and player in the same game. We're not going to let her get away with this, guys.
So that's the other thing, so
Which we're using.
our legal funds will understand. It's very
Interesting because I think with the PAIA
request, and they are obviously hiding something.
Oh yeah.
otherwise they wouldn't be protesting so much. So
Yes, it's going to be very interesting times, and
Indeed. That's about it, guys.
if you
Thanks for
haven't,
listening to us. Thanks for bearing with the the circus.
I also wanted to say,
So today I've been at 60 Days of
activism
Day that was organised actually by Mr.
police.
It was very interesting. We are still
Kicking off our 16 days of action, not activism. Next Friday, I'm busy interviewing some amazing strong women. So I will release one video of one lady each day during those days. If you haven't bought a copy of Scrappy yet, please support us. If you've got kids between 3 and 10, please contact us and buy the Scrappy book because that contributes and
It's a great book about gun-proofing your kids.
So that is it. Thank you very much. We've been quite a bit longer today, but hopefully that's been informative to you. Cheers for now and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Have a great weekend, guys.
from the circus out.
It's been a real circus today. It's been rampaging. No.